What's going on, Shawty? Lena, what's going on? All right, Coach, I see you on there, so I'm gonna give me a couple more minutes, and then we're gonna bring you right on. We start on time. Appreciate you, Ed. How you doing, man? Heard a lot about you. We're gonna have to talk offline one day and get real acquainted. Hey, Mama. Jay, what's going on? Kiara, how you doing? I'm gonna get in touch with you. I got a project that I need you on. So it's 7 o'clock. We're gonna get this thing started. Welcome everyone to the Positive Impact Podcast, where we talk about everything about the game that I love. Tonight we got a very special guest. He's the Director of Coaching Development for USA Basketball's Youth Division. A great guy. Every time I see him at basketball events, he shows love, and I got a lot of respect for him. So without further ado, we're going to invite Coach Don Showalter to the show. Coach, you should have got a request. You just have to accept the request to get on. We're having some technical difficulties with Coach right now. Gonna get him on here. In the meantime, JJ, what's happening? Smooth, what's going on? CT, what's happening? All right, here he goes. There he is.
Yeah,
This new
that's better.
technology, man.
I tell you
How are
what,
you?
good, great. How are you? I'm happy to be on.
I'm doing fine.
You do such great work with the coaches and youth in your area, so I'm happy to be a part of it.
Coach, I appreciate everything that you say, man. So first things first, man, how are you and your family doing out there at this time?
We're doing good. Our office is closed, obviously, here at USA Basketball in Colorado Springs. So my wife and I are actually back in Iowa, where we still have our house back here, and where I've coached for a lot of years. So just back here working remotely and not doing much.
Right, now, good. As long as you guys are
Staying in.
safe, that's the most important thing.
That's right.
Awesome. So since you're back in Iowa, man, let's go right there, man, and talk about your background growing up in that state, man, and your 42 years of coaching out there, man, where you're a legend.
Well, I don't know about that. I think that's just because I coached a long time out here. But yeah, I actually coached at four different high schools for 42 years. Had a great experience each one of them. And usually I didn't move because I wanted to get something better. I moved for a lot of number of reasons. I think young coaches today just move to because they want to climb the ladder too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I look back on my coaching uh, different schools, and I think that um, I think that you have to do a great job of where you're at, and I really tried to do that here
Mm-hmm.
at the high schools I coached in Iowa. But yeah, at the same time, I was also obviously worked a lot of camps and ran camps here in Iowa and all over the country, and then of course coached USA basketball's junior national teams as well for 10 years. So a lot of basketball in those years while I was coaching high school and working with USA basketball.
So during your time, coaching in high school, and we'll get into USA basketball. But during your coaching in high school, how did you come up with how you developed the culture of coaching? Like, where did you get your, like, who are your mentors in coaching where you took something from to build your own programs?
That's a great question because we all need mentors, and no matter how long we've been coaching or doing something, we certainly keep learning. We're all lifelong learners, or at
Absolutely.
least we hope to be.
Right.
So yeah, my mentors, first of all, was my high school coach. Was one of my mentors. He was, I thought, way ahead of his time with what he did. My college coach was NAIA Hall of Fame coach, and then I worked a lot of camps. John Wooden camp in California for many years. Some of you young guys probably don't remember, obviously don't remember Coach Wooden when he coached, but he's a legend and won 10 national championships. So, and that was just kind of a remarkable way I got on his staff. I wrote him a handwritten letter when I first got out of college and just wanted to be part of his camps as a counselor. And you know how that goes. You think he comes back. He actually wrote me a handwritten letter back, which I still have to this day.
Wow.
And said that they would put me on the list, and you're thinking, yeah, you're going to be on a list with about 8,000 other people.
Right.
But it worked out that I was a counselor for 1 year, and they asked me to come back to coach. So I really worked his camps for about 20 years, and he was a huge mentor for me. Just obviously, he's a mentor for everybody now that he's passed away. You read his books and he's got some great things that he still talks about coaching that are still applicable today, regardless. So he was a big mentor for me. And then I think as a coach, as I started to grow in my coaching and felt comfortable in my coaching roles, I think you lean on other people, other coaches, maybe that become good friends, and they don't have to necessarily be coaches that are a lot older than you. I think you can reach out to people who have been through the same things you have and be a mentor. And growing up, my dad was a huge mentor of mine. He was never one to push me into basketball, but he certainly provided opportunities for me. And I think that's, as a parent, I look back on that now and understand how important that was. That my dad was there, and my mom, they gave me the opportunities. And then I fell in love with basketball at a young age, probably around fifth or sixth grade.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the game, as we all do. Somebody made us love the game,
Right.
Terrell, and we stay in it and coach it. So I think mentors have changed throughout the years as well. And you go from Coach Wooden and you work other camps and you find guys who you bounce things off of and that have the same kind of maybe positives or negatives that you have run into as coaches. So our mentors change regularly as we go throughout our lifetime, I think.
So what type of things for your, when you started coaching your teams, like what were your philosophies in coaching? Like, these are the things that were your non-negotiables. I've talked to a lot of coaches about non-negotiables. So like, what was the culture in your coaching philosophies while you were in high school?
Yeah, I think my first job I took as a really young coach out of college, and now now culture is is kind of a buzzword for coaches and programs,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't really think of it as culture back in the when I first started coaching. But
Mm-hmm.
you just want to create a proper environment. And I think that's one of
Mm-hmm.
the main things is create an environment where your kids love to come to. And
Right.
so, as a young coach and as a young player, even, I was one of those who couldn't get enough of basketball, and I always wanted to get to practice. But I love the game so much that I spent a lot of time on my own getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And if we love something, if we love the game, if young kids love the game, they're going to spend a lot of time in their driveway. They're going to spend a lot of time just getting better. And so I think the love of the game philosophy. One of the philosophical things I always do say is that as a coach, one of our main jobs is to make the players, allow the players, give the players something to make them love the game. And how we do that can be a number of different ways. But I think as a coach, we have to really instill that love of the game in coaches, in players as a coach. So uh, philosophy-wise, X's and O's are really not a philosophy. I think that's something we do.
Mm-hmm.
Philosophies are maybe how you handle your practice sessions. What are your non-negotiables, such as what are some things that you do on the court that we do on the court that we would emphasize every day. In other words, for instance, having our wings on a fast break run to the corners. That's a non-negotiable on the court. And if they don't do that, we stop and say that all the time to them. So that's an emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
Another emphasis is defensive transition. How are we going to stop the other team from getting a fast break? So I think points of emphasis is part of your non-negotiables. And you can't have too many of them because you're not going to be able to have 10 non-negotiables as a coach. You can have maybe, I say three, have three really good non-negotiables. Uh, Maybe three offense, three defensive non-negotiables. And then you have some off-court non-negotiables as well. You
Yeah.
know, on time, what are your standards for your
Mm-hmm.
team, those kind of things. So a lot goes into having non-negotiables. I think a lot goes into that as a coach. And as a young coach, I probably didn't fully understand everything that goes into that environment.
Right.
But watching other coaches and having mentors, I got more familiar with that.
Okay. Awesome. So, you know, I guess, I always wonder like things like this, and I've been watching basketball a long time. So tell me, in 1998, you were coaching high school at the time in 1998, and
Yep.
all of a sudden you get a phone call to say we want you to coach the Nike Hoop Summit team. Take me through that, like what is it like getting a phone call like that? Like, do you feel like, why me of all the coaches in the country, like you asked me,
Yep.
like talk about that, because that has to be a great honor.
Yeah, that's a great question. I get asked that a lot. I think, first of all, the guy who worked for USA Basketball was named by Milt Newton. Milt's now he's a GM for the Milwaukee Bucks.
Okay.
And so he obviously went off to other things, but I got to know him a little bit through some camps and those kind of things. So I always say, you don't do work camps or go to clinics for networking, but networking evolves from that,
Yes.
and type thing. So I kept in touch with Milton, and I was probably kind of a pain in the butt to him, actually. But we had kept in good contact, and we got along really well. And so at the time in '98, it was before that as well. But we had some really good success in high school, and so it's just by kind of making that initial contact with him, and then Milt asked me if I wanted to coach in the Hoop Summit, and you had to bring that up because it was a fun experience. But the guy we played against just he pretty much took it to our American young players.
And that guy was?
Well, Dirk Nowitzki,
Yes,
and
sir.
that's interesting because at that time, Terrell, there wasn't any scouting from international
Mm-hmm.
players that young. There
Mm-hmm.
wasn't any there wasn't a FIBA event, there wasn't a U16, U17, so people didn't really know him. In fact, he was kind of a late addition on their team. Had
Right.
played in Germany and all that kind of stuff, and
Right.
kind of a floppy-haired guy coming
Yeah.
over, and but I think we held him to, I don't know, 32 points and 25 rebounds that
Yeah.
game, and he really came into his own, and obviously then he's one of the top draft picks because of that Hoop Summit game, and that was
Right.
in San Antonio. But what a great experience! It was a great international experience because that's the first time I had ever coached at the international level, and
Okay.
I was really pleased with our kids. I thought we did a great job with what I thought was uh, playing against a much better international team as well. So that was my first experience with USA basketball, and
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that experience. And then from then on, other things happened with being on some committees, and we had hoop festivals and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So, but that was the
Absolutely.
start. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then in 2005, we get another call, and now we're the coach of the McDonald's All-American game, which is, obviously a prestigious game every year. Now, did you coach the East Squad or the West Squad?
Yeah, actually, I coached the McDonald's game in '99, a
Oh, 99. Okay.
year after we had year after we had the Hoop Summit,
Okay.
and that was in actually the game was played in Ames, Iowa.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so we had at that time we had Nick Collison,
Mm-hmm.
who was really one of the country's best players, but he
Mm-hmm.
played in that game as well. So that was in '99. Played at Ames at Hilton Coliseum in Ames. So I was very fortunate to be named to that coaching staff there as well. But that was a great experience. Those were great kids. I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the McDonald's game is touted as an all-star game, so it's a little
Mm-hmm.
different than our USA basketball,
Right.
training camp stuff. But it was a great experience. Jonathan Bender at that time was one of the top high school players in the country,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel if he wouldn't have gotten injured, he'd have been a great NBA player as well. But he actually broke the scoring record of Michael Jordan in that game. Uh,
Yes.
so that was
Yes.
a fun experience, and actually that was it was one of those things where I think he was 1 point away from breaking that mark, and I didn't know that, but the scorekeeper said, "Hey, you better leave him in so you can break Michael Jordan's record." So uh, the official heard me, and he says, the official told me, he says, "You get him the ball, and I'll make sure he gets to the free throw line." So so that's how he actually broke the record with 2 free throws. And that's the only time I've ever had an official tell me that, Terrell. I'm telling
Wow.
you
Yeah. I bet. I bet.
that.
I
So
bet.
that was a fun experience. We had Mike Dunleavy at the time, Casey Jacobson, he was a great shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Our team, we won. We were on the West team, and we beat the East team. The East team had Jay Williams at the time,
Mm-hmm.
was a great player. But
Mm-hmm.
what a great experience with those guys, and it was just a fun experience.
So did you ever have any issues? Obviously sometimes with All Americans who are being catered to.
Yep.
Was it tough to coach in some games? We want to get out there, we want to play as much as we can. We worked hard to be a McDonald's All American. You also coached in the Jordan Brand game a couple of times. So
Yeah.
is it tough to coach kids in an all-star setting, or did you find it easier?
Well, in the All-Star setting again is it's different than our USA basketball setting because you don't have 2 or 3 weeks to practice beforehand and get them in a team setting. So basically, what you do is in your practices you have about 3 practices, then you're ready to play with the McDonald's game and the Jordan game. But I think you let them know that you're going to have some fun at it, but nobody's going to play more than about half a game.
Mm-hmm.
I think when they understand when you're consistent in your communication by just saying, "Hey, everybody's going to play. We're all going to play about half a game. So when I take you out, don't give me that look like, how come you took me out?"
Right,
That's,
right.
so yeah. So I don't. I mean, I really think that when players understand what your expectations are, I think they're really good with it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've always tried to be really upfront with players in all-star games as well. And I think then they put a little trust when they get a little trust in what you're saying, what you're doing. then they have a great time at it. And I think I felt pretty comfortable with those All-Star games. And obviously I think it helped that I had coached in the Hoop Summit in '98, so it gave me some credibility that I had coached that level of player previously as well, going into the McDonald's and the Jordan games and things like that.
Okay. So now you get the call from USA Basketball. Like, tell me about that. Like, that has to be a great honor. You know, they give you a call, I believe it was 2016, and
Yep.
they actually be the director of coaching development. So for the youth division. So
Yep.
how was that? Like, was that something that just came to you? Was that something that you were, that you heard through the grapevine and you went and pursued it?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, these are great questions, because I think it also gives the idea of how coaches go about changing jobs themselves, or looking for other jobs. But after I coached the Hoop Summit, and then I was a part of a lot of committees, the player committees and the selection committees for USA Basketball, because before that time we had what we call festivals,
Right.
Olympic festivals,
Mm-hmm.
and we had north, south, east, west players in 4 teams of 10, and we would have competition for about a week during that time. So this is before that FIBA started the U16 and U17. So from about 2000 to 2009, we had the festivals, and during that time in 2002, we had guys like LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul were all a part of our festivals, and so I was a part of that as a coach, and then I was a part of that as a selection chairman too. So I had done some stuff with USA Basketball, and then in 2009 they asked me to coach, so I was a part of the coaching staff. Took over the head job of FIBA, and then in 2016, I had known they had started the youth division with USA Basketball in 2015,
Mm-hmm.
and they had wanted me to come on board a year earlier, or a little bit earlier than I actually did. But at that time, I was still kind of not really, I guess, wanting to leave high school coaching.
Right.
I was here in Iowa City, and just really putting a program together that I felt was going to be really strong. So I waited a year, and then in 2016, we had kind of gotten the program turned around at City High here, and felt good about leaving it to my assistant and things like that. So the timing was really good. And it was kind of a thing where it wasn't so much all of a sudden I got asked to be a part of USA Basketball from the coach development standpoint. We kind of led into it several years earlier. So, but it's been a great thing. I coached obviously after coaching it, and then the U16, U17 teams, and now I'm in charge of coach development, where I do a lot of clinics and camps. And then also part of my job now is to actually organize the junior national team. I go out and watch players all the time, and
Right.
players for our camps and coaches and stuff like that. Yep.
So take me through that, like what you're looking for. So I first met you at a camp for middle school kids at John Lucas's camp,
Yep.
his middle school combine out in Houston, and then I also usually see you once a year at the Hoop Hall. So
Yep.
those cover a lot of age groups. Like, you're talking about being at a international middle school camp
Yep.
in May of every year, when kids are 8th grade, rising 9th graders, and then you're talking about obviously watching older kids. So let's start with like the younger kids. So what are you looking for, and how do you identify players that you want to bring into the USA Basketball fold that young?
Well, that's a great question, because first of all, we do depend a lot on guys like yourself who've seen young kids, or just scouting reports around the country. They'll tell us, hey, this kid's really good. You need to watch him. So between me and Samson Coyote, who's on our staff as well, we go actually watch every kid we invite.
Mm-hmm.
And so we hate to go on just on film or um, somebody's recommendation, even though we trust a lot of guys that we talk to about their recommendations. We actually want to go see the kid play, because sometimes they don't fit what we want, even though they're really good players. We
Mm-hmm.
watch a lot more than maybe just how skilled they are. So to
Mm-hmm.
your point, when I go watch an eighth grader play, and I understand all of their the maturity level and everything like that, but you take that into account. But I watch things like body language, how they how they're coachable, if they're humble enough to take coaching, do they want to get better, uh, high level of competitive nature, do they really compete? Um, and as I watch them, I kind of make sure that uh, the boxes check off.
Mm-hmm.
How smart do they play? Smart. In other words,
Mm-hmm.
if they make a mistake, do they make the same mistake again and again and again? Or if they make a mistake, does that follow up with another mistake? Maybe they make a bad pass and they don't get back on defense. So we want kids that are smart from that aspect. I think the second thing is we like kids that are, for lack of a better word, I think is tough. Terrell, just a tough kid. If the
Mm-hmm.
ball's on the floor, are they the one that really tries to go after the ball? Uh, are they the one that wants to play defense on the other team's best player?
Mm-hmm.
Um, they want the ball in their hands when they need a shot or a good pass. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that all goes into toughness. Are they around the ball a lot? Type of thing. And of course, you
Right.
have to have players that are skilled. What
Mm-hmm.
level of skill do they have? Are they? We say that they have to be. We think they have to be skilled enough so that down the road we see them as possible NBA players.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the level that we think that they want to, obviously, that we want them to be at. And then the fourth thing is versatile. When we see a player, and in eighth grade, seventh grade is a little bit tougher, but we also don't want them to be classified to a position. I hear too many coaches say, yeah, he's a point guard, he's a wing shooter, he's my post guy, he's a four, and we're talking about eighth graders. We want to
Right.
just we want to be players. Hey, can they
Right.
just play? If
Mm-hmm.
they have to handle a basketball, can they do that? If
Mm-hmm.
can they play defense on, a guy that's 6 inches shorter, 6 inches taller than them? Be versatile. And then the last thing is resilient is another really character for us. So
Right.
resilient is, do they get up after they fall down or something doesn't go their way? What's their reaction? Playing through things, resilient. So those are kind of what we call our DNAs for what we look for in kids: smart, tough, skilled, versatile, and resilient. And again, kids might be, different areas of the country are different. So
Mm-hmm.
a player might be really good in one area of the country, but when you consider the when you consider the whole country, not quite as good as we would like. And so you have to take that in consideration as well. And we know there's a lot of kids that are really good players. There's a
Right.
lot of players that are really, I mean, really high level.
Right.
And so, but I think we see everybody that we think could be a high level, and then make our invitations from there.
Okay. So if I'm a coach and I
Yep.
see you at the camp and
Yep.
I think I got a kid who deserves a shot. Like
Yep.
I'm sure you get inquiries about that like all the time. Hey coach, I got a player who I think would be good. And so how do you handle that? Like you guys have your way of doing things. Like how do you
Yep.
handle people coming up to you because they know who you are? I mean, you always wear the USA basketball gear. Hey, I got a guy
Yep.
who I think deserves to come out there and get a shot. How do you handle that?
Well, I mean, and I think that's another great question. But we relish that. I mean, we want people to let us know the good players, because if we we may not see every good player ourselves, so we depend on coaches that have good players. And what we do, I mean, we always take down their names, and then we make it a point of contacting the player and then finding out where they're going to be playing at, what camps they're going to, what AAU circuit or what club circuit they're going to be on. So we make a great effort, and we hit all the circuits. We hit the Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike circuits, because to us, we're just looking for players. And I think so we really relish the fact that we want that openness, that we can be approached with players and names, and not that we're going to take everybody that we get, obviously, but we're going to certainly put them on our list, and make good contact with them so that we have them as a possibility for down the road. And it may not. A lot of times, players don't fit the age group that we're looking at. They might be too old or might be a year too young, but so hopefully we'll have them down the road, so we'll keep track of how they're doing. Just a couple of those great examples, I think, come to mind where, obviously guys like Jason Tatum, we watched him as a young player. But, we didn't invite him right away. Justice Winslow, who to me is one of the best competitive players that we've ever had. We actually cut him as a U16 player. Didn't make our first U16 team. And I've told this story many times where he used that as high motivation, comes back the next year, makes our U17 team, and makes the all tournament team for our World Cup. And so, so we keep guys like that on our radar and follow them and see how they're going to do.
Right. So I think I remember that camp. I came out there. BJ Johnson, who was working with you at the time, got in touch with him, and and came out to Colorado for that camp. I think Justice Winslow and Rondae Hollis Jefferson, Jabari Parker, and Tyus Jones, So when I came out there and was able to observe a USA basketball team camp, one of the things that stuck out to me when I was at the camp didn't happen on the court. It actually happened off the court. Tell everybody a little bit about your mind candy.
I mean, that's part of USA basketball, really. And we started that with our U16 players in 2009. That team was Brad Beal, Andre Drummond, that group, Quinn Cook. So we really keep in good contact with them. But I've always done that with my high school team. So I have a mind candy for the day, which is just a saying that kind of helps kids get ready for practice. I think players need to get focused in for practice. And I think the mind candy helps them get focused in on practice. For instance, a mind candy might be these things require zero talent: being on time, work ethic, body language, energy, attitude, being coachable. That might be a mind candy for the day. And so what we do in a classroom setting, they all have a notebook, and they write the mind candy down for that day. And then we kind of talk about how that relates to our team, how that relates to them as a player. And I go back to Jabari Parker when he was with us, and Jabari said his favorite one was pressure can either burst pipes or make diamonds. And he said, I've never, ever forgotten that, even though now he's been in the league a number of years and making a fairly good living in the league. So those are the kind of things that we stress off the court, and the mind candy is a big part of that. And we still think that's really important. And I people follow me on Twitter at dshow23. I always have a lot of mind candy stuff pretty much on a daily basis. And I think it's good for coaches and players and even, adults who aren't involved in basketball, but it kind of gives us some semblance of thoughts for the day.
Right. So we're here with Director of Coaching Development for USA Basketball, Don Showalter. If you got any questions for Coach, please put them in the box so we can get your questions answered. So, Coach, what's the misconception? Like, are there any misconceptions with USA Basketball? Like, people think it's a certain way, but it's really not?
Wow, that's a loaded question, Terrell. I don't really. I mean, I don't know as such. I think there's some things that maybe people have that would be construed as misconceptions. I mean, we just because we are sponsored by one of our sponsors is Nike, that all our
Mm-hmm.
kids have to be Nike affiliated, which is certainly not true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have Under Armour kids, we got Adidas kids. If you look at our rosters, in fact, most of the time, to be honest with you, we don't even until when I was coaching, I didn't even know who they really which one they played for.
Right.
Now I do because I have to go to all the events. But uh,
Right.
that has nothing to do with the level that we want to. We want to get the best players for USA basketball. So, and we don't. The teams. We've had a lot of players that play for Under Armour teams and Adidas teams. So, um, I'm not sure that's a misconception or not, but I think I've had people ask me that previously. Is that this kid doesn't play for Nike, can he still play for USA Basketball? I go, of course, if
Right.
he's the level that we want. Um, and then I think some other maybe misconceptions might be the fact that that maybe we only we only look at players uh, who are from a certain area of the country, or if if they're from a certain area of the country, they have a better chance of making our teams.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, that's completely ridiculous because there's good players all over the country. I
Right.
will say though, I think there's some hots. I mean, to me, there's some what I would call hot spots for high school basketball in the country. I
Mm-hmm.
think. Obviously I think DC is a huge area, big area. I think Atlanta's got some really good players. Houston has always been really good. I think Minneapolis, the Twin Cities, is now just kind of starting to come out with some really good players.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you California areas, but um, so I don't. I mean, we certainly don't intentionally say this kid's from Detroit, so we're not going to take him
Mm-hmm.
or wherever. But um, other misconceptions might be that players have to be certain size or height. That's
Mm-hmm.
just not true. We want to be versatile and everything that goes into that. So I hope that helps answer some of the questions. Uh, and if there are some questions about that, I would hope that they would contact me and I can certainly clear those things up.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. That definitely makes a lot of sense. Um, so the Nike Hoop Summit team, how do you guys select that? So is it like, because some people might think, and this might be another
Yeah.
misconception, that you might just take, if you're taking 15 guys, then you're just going to go on ESPN Top 100, you know what I mean, and say, okay, we're just going to take the top 15 guys.
Right. I just saw a comment here that I didn't mention New York or New Jersey for the hot spot. Well, New Jersey is. I would say New Jersey's a hot spot, but New York is used to be really good,
Uh-huh.
and now I think some of their players are moving out of New York to go to other high schools.
Yes.
So that
Right.
answers that question. But the hoop summit's a little different. I'm glad you brought that up because
Mm-hmm.
that is we don't bring players in for our hoop summit and for a training camp and then cut them down to 12. We only take 12
Mm-hmm.
for that. So what we do on that is most of those, well, they've all been part of our mini camps or training camps previously. So
Mm-hmm.
since they were freshmen, sophomores, or juniors, so we have a really good idea of that level of player when it's
Mm-hmm.
time for the hoop summit. So we just make our choices based on what we've seen when they've been with us in the past, and that's probably our most difficult. I would say difficult team to really um,
Mm-hmm.
really choose, just because uh, they're all high school seniors. I think we have to make sure that they fit a team that we want to make because this is different than a McDonald's All Star team. It's different than a Jordan team, the Hoop
Right.
Summit. It's a team that we have to make sure that that we're have that high level of team atmosphere, and because we're playing a really good international team on that. For people who don't know the Hoop Summit, we have our best high school seniors against the best international players
Right.
around the world, and so that's really it's a big event for us, and we really we haven't taken some players in the past that are really good that we've had some questions on, but overall I think we've had some really good kids that just buy into our team chemistry, and that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing for that.
So when you say, like, we have some questions, is it a character issue? Is it like, how is it also, like, I'm sure, like, kids got entourages now. Like, what
Yeah,
I mean? Like, do you guys huddle around and say, listen, man, like, we don't want this circus around us. We just want some kids that are just going to come here and play. Like, what kind of questions would you might have? You know what I mean? I
yeah,
think it's important that, honestly, like, sometimes I think it's important that parents and the people around the kids understand how how it can make a kid look, because character is a big one.
yeah. No question, and the the aspect of players inner circle, I would like to say,
Mm-hmm.
um, that changes. I think what we found out personally in the last 4, 5, 6 years is I think that for the elite player, that circle has gotten smaller. I think
Okay.
back when I'll just use LeBron for instance. When he was a junior and senior in high school, I think that circle was really a large one. I think his made a difference that kids kind of understand that not everybody's there to really help them, and so I think our USA basketball, the education part, has really helped that out a lot because
Mm-hmm.
when we get them for our mini camps, we do a lot of just education on not only the mind candy stuff, but we do a lot of things to help them make some decisions on their own without having 4, 5, 6 other people trying to make that decision for them. So and that has a lot to do with just how they fit in and the chemistry part to it. And I would tell parents this, and even people who are involved with players at a different level, that if they're part of their inner circle, don't you be the reason that they don't make a team. In other
Right.
words, parents, don't you be the reason that we don't invite your son to play. Are you gonna be the parent who is a watchdog and wants everything given to them from the aspect of a parent? So be careful that you're not the reason that we decide, hey, we don't want to mess with this baggage that we know is going to come with this player. And
Right.
I think for the most part, I would say very few of our players that we've had that made our teams both in the Hoop Summit and our World Cups and U17, U16. I think that has been really good. I don't think there's been a lot of entourages that have really been uh, negative for our players, and so
Right.
I think that says a lot about the people they're picking to be with.
Awesome. So I got a couple of questions. So you said, if there are any misconceptions, like you would hope that people would reach out to you so that you can clear that up.
Yep.
How would somebody get in touch with you to ask that question?
Yeah, well, they can get a hold of me on my Twitter account at dshow23.
Mm-hmm.
That might be the best way
Mm-hmm.
right now. And then I can give them my email address from that, and we can converse. But that would probably
Okay.
be the best way.
Okay. And then another question is, obviously with the, COVID-19 going on right
Yeah.
now, and all these events, canceled, like this would be a live month right now. What do you see what's going to happen with youth basketball this year with so much up in the air?
Boy, you've touched on a subject I think that we're all us basketball people are concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, now is a time where, especially those juniors and younger players, they're on the circuit. They want to be seen. They want to be involved in recruiting right now, and it's a tough time for that. But the nice thing, I guess, the positive part to it, everybody's in the same level. Everybody's in the same boat. And
Right.
college coaches now are going to have to, I think it's going to change a little bit where they can go out and see kids playing maybe more next fall and have some events next fall, and maybe the live period will open up a little more. But this is a crucial time for a lot of high school kids, and some of the kids are going to slip through the cracks and not get that scholarship maybe at a really high level if they want to. Whereas if they could be seen 2 and 3 and 4 times on an Under Armour, Adidas, or Nike circuit, then they would probably get that scholarship. So I would encourage coaches and players to send their highlight tape out, send game film out to places they're interested in. Most college coaches that I've talked to recently, and I've talked to a lot of them, that obviously know we've had kids in camp and really interested about finding out more about the kids. But I think most of the college coaches they know who they're recruiting, and they have an eye on certain kids. But again, there's a lot of coaches I'm surprised at, college coaches that that really have a lot of scholarships available. Because of transferring and kids coming out early for the NBA. So I think there's going to be a lot of scholarships available down the road as we hopefully get out of this crazy time and get back to a little bit of normalcy.
Absolutely. And talking about the NBA, so Isaiah Todd and Jalen Green just opted to not go to college and go to the G League. Like, how do you think that's going to change the game? Do you see more of the top level kids, which probably that are going to come to USA Basketball? Do you see more of them going to going this G League route?
Yeah, I really haven't kind of wrapped my head around how that's going to affect everything. Both those kids have been a part of us, been on our teams. Jalen Green, and he's one of my favorite all-time players. I love the kid. He played for us, both U16, U17. He's one of those players I keep in constant contact with. Isaiah Todd is going to be really, really gifted. He's going to improve tremendously. But I think the G League is a better option than the option that R.J. Hampton took, or going to China. So I think they're getting a pretty good salary, and it's just going to be that one G League team is going to be made up of the high school players. So they're not going to be at college more than another year anyway, and so I think they're going to get a head start a little bit on the NBA, and actually the NBA has done a great job kind of formalizing this and making sure that these kids are getting paid enough that they can forego playing in New Zealand and Australia, and hopefully they're not going to play a ton of games. I don't think it's going to be more development, and I know that they're looking at some coaches for that, and so in the long run, if the NBA doesn't go to wipe out the one and done, and kids get drafted out of high school, it's probably I think it's only going to really affect, in my opinion, it's only really going to affect maybe 4 or 5 players that are at that level anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So last question I'm going to ask is, and this is going back to the film for coaches right now. So like, should kids actually send like a game film and say, here's my game, or should they break it up into to highlights? Because I would figure like if you're going to send a highlight tape, you're going to show all the good, what I mean, where coaches kind of want to see. You're not going to show, he ain't running up and down the court, he's lazy. So what would you suggest? Like, do you actually send the game film, or do you break it up into a highlight tape?
Yeah, good question, because we get this question a lot for us too. So when people reach out to us and say, hey, this kid's really good, he's 16 years old, we want to see what you think of him for USA Basketball. We say send us a game film, probably 2 entire game films, and then a highlight film.
Okay.
So we kind of like to see both of them. and that gives us a good idea of what they are like in the game, and then also the highlight film. So I think that's a good method to do.
Awesome. Awesome. So before we get out of here, I got a couple quick hitters that I want to hit you with right now.
Sure.
Put your thinking cap on right now.
You got it.
All right. So in all your years of coaching at USA Basketball and be a part of USA Basketball, give me your toughest player that you think, like this one kid, like through it all, like he was the kid, like this was the toughest kid, and I'll take this kid on any team, any day.
We've had a lot of good ones like that, but I would say the names that come to my mind most quickly and most often, Justice Winslow is probably one of them. Brad Beal is another one. Surprisingly, Gary Trent Jr. is one that comes. I mean, he's just really, and I think that showed in his ability now to be in part of the program with the Trailblazers. I mean, he's worked himself into a starting lineup. So those are probably the three absolute toughest kids that I think. And the Tyus Jones was right in there as well. So I could go on with more, but those
absolutely,
those names jump up right now.
Okay. And in international play, now we talked about Dirk earlier. Is Dirk the best player that you've seen internationally in high school?
Well, at that time, he dominated. He controlled the whole game. There's a lot of good international players right now that are coming through. Canada's got a lot of good players. I think France and Spain are three of probably the best top ones. France has they have three NBA guys that we played against in our U17. So, but I think Dirk is at the time we played, he was head and shoulders above really anything else that we've come against.
Absolutely. So you're choosing a USA basketball team. Give me your point guard. Who's running your team?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here, man.
I got to, Coach. This is what I do, man. This is what I do.
I know.
Who's running the point for you?
At what age? I mean, you're talking about 16, 17s or?
Yep.
Well, we've had a lot of really good ones. Just as far as running the team, Tyus Jones might be one of the best as far as just being a true guy who runs the team for us. But we've had I give Quinn Cook a lot of credit back in 2009 and 10. I'm glad to see he's made it. Another point guard that I think has been very probably one of the better ones is coming up and we played him some at point guard, but he really probably wasn't a point guard. Was Jared Vanderbilt, and Jared was kind of a 6'9" kid. He's been injured a lot, but I really liked him out front of the point. But I think Tyus Jones is probably just a flat out guard. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And then who's playing alongside of him in the backcourt?
Well, you got to go with. Personally, Jason Tatum's got to be in there. He was one of the. He was one of those kids who just you hated to take out of the game because you knew he made everybody better. I think the other wing, we've had several really good ones. We actually had Aaron Gordon play some wing for us. He was so explosive for us there. I think he's got to be in that mention. Jabari Parker, when he was healthy, was really good for us. Obviously, Brad Beal has got to be there. I think he set all kinds of records for USA Basketball in 2009 when he played. So those are some pretty good names you throw in there alongside.
Okay, and then who you got man in the middle?
Oh boy, we've had some really good ones recently. Wiseman is going to probably be one of the top draft picks. He was really good for us. He's 16. Vernon Carey was also good. But you go back to Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond was, he's a beast in there. And So I think, those are Isaiah Stewart showed that he's pretty good as well. So those
Absolutely.
guys, so at the post position or the center position, I think those guys are pretty solid. But then at the other, at the forward spot, you look at guys like that I'm thinking about. Harry Giles played.
Mm-hmm.
He was a tremendous player for us, and even guys like Jason Tatum played a lot of the four spot for stretch four because he could shoot so well
Mm-hmm.
as well. So
Nah, that's awesome. Nah, I
Justice,
appreciate that.
Justice Winslow, he's got to be
Yeah,
thrown in there.
yeah, absolutely. Nah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Coach, I appreciate you giving me your time tonight, man, and dropping gems on our guest tonight, man. Thank you so much for coming on, man, and good luck, and we'll definitely be in touch soon.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. I love talking, visiting with you, and it's great to see you when I'm out at events and just visiting with you because I know you're in it for the right reason, and I really appreciate that. And
I
and
appreciate the kind words.
people can contact me on my Twitter account at dshow23, and we'll stay in touch.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate you. Stay safe.
Thanks, man. You bet. You too.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.